Hi, my name's Tiffany. Guys, have you ever had such a feeling when you don't want to return home after work or school? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. I really don't want to go home. I live in an apartment with a person who makes my life a real hell. You may ask me why I can't kick the person out or leave this place myself. Well, that's because we live in my apartment and this person is a kid. Anyway, it's all complicated. You want to know what went wrong in my life and when it happened? Then make sure you watch this video to the end. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. I got married at 19. My friends and family claimed I was still too young for marriage, but I was sure I had met the person I wanted to spend my whole life with. I met Robert when I was 18. At that time, I just finished my first year at college, and in summer, my friends and I went to the seaside to relax and have a good time. Some of them took their friends and acquaintances. As a result, we went there with a large and noisy group. I met my future husband there. It happened that I got into the car with Robert. On our way, we talked a little. I found out he was 5 years older than me, and he worked as a teacher. At that moment, I thought we had nothing in common, and it was unlikely we would ever become friends. But in the next 24 hours that we spent on the road to the coast, everything suddenly changed. It turned out we liked the same music, the same movies. We had the same views on a lot of things, and Robert was quite an interesting person. During our vacation, we liked to hang out somewhere together. We would walk along the beach all night, staying behind the rest of the group. We were discussing a lot of interesting things. Our friends started joking and called us a sweet couple. Of course, we denied it and got offended sometimes, but on our last day of vacation, Robert asked me to be his girlfriend, and I agreed. He admitted he fell in love with me at first sight. He was very worried I would be confused by his age. But does age really matter when you feel that this is just your person? Anyway, it was a great vacation. I relaxed and started dating a good guy. My boyfriend was the best in the world, and he also knew well how to surprise girls. Remember, I told you Robert worked as a teacher? It turned out he taught at my college. At first, I thought we would have to hide our relationship, but Robert assured me everything was fine. After all, he was a young scientist who had just recently graduated from college himself. If he were an experienced professor with a gray beard, then problems would start. Some guys from my group were very surprised I was dating a teacher. Others didn't understand what I found in this old man. And one girl even told me Robert shouldn't be trusted because I wasn't the first student he'd had a relationship with. But Robert's ex-girlfriends really didn't matter to me. I was confident in him and in our future. This relationship was perfect in every way. We never quarreled. We always supported and understood each other, and we spent a lot of time together. 6 months later, Robert asked me to move in with him, and I agreed. We met each other's parents, and even introduced them to each other when we met on a picnic with a large group. So when Robert proposed to me, I immediately replied yes. It was on the anniversary of our meeting. We went to the same coast where our relationship started. Robert arranged a romantic evening for us, where he told me he wanted me to become his wife. It was the best day of my life. My parents made us a gorgeous wedding gift, an apartment. They decided it would be better if we immediately started to make our own nest, instead of changing one rented apartment after another. Anyway, everything was perfect. I had a beloved husband, a cozy home. I studied and worked at a part-time job in a bookstore. I started working because I didn't want to freeload off Robert, and I wanted to make some contributions to our family budget. Our life was totally perfect for several months. And then strange things started. Robert started to stay late at work quite often. When he came back, he was very nervous and angry. I thought this was because of exams, students' final tests. But when they were over and we were on Christmas holidays, my husband constantly disappeared somewhere. One evening, he brought home a little boy. Seeing my surprised look, Robert hurried to introduce the kid to me. The kid's name was Tom. He was only 4. I wanted to shake his little hand, but Tom hid behind Robert's back. He looked scared and hostile. When the kid fell asleep, my husband told me the boy's story. It turned out Tom was the son of Robert's close friend. Unfortunately, his parents recently died in a car accident. Robert didn't want the boy to end up in an orphanage, so he took him for himself. Of course, I was very upset. My husband didn't even ask me about it. After all, it was a very responsible decision, especially for our young family. But I didn't get angry or argue. Robert was already very upset. Besides, it was a noble act. He saved the kid because he would definitely have a hard life in an orphanage. I had no choice but to accept the fact there were now 3 of us, and there was a kid in the family. Together, we arranged a kid's corner, bought a crib, toys, and everything he needed. Tom was still reluctant to contact me. He only played with Robert. He turned to him when he needed something. He asked him to read him bedtime stories or take a walk with him. When I was going for a walk with him, Tom always got cranky and started crying. As a result, I stayed at home. I understood it was probably not easy for a kid to survive the loss of his parents, but I still felt uncomfortable because Tom literally ignored my existence. But after a while, I realized it would be better if he really ignored me. This kid started framing me and lying to Robert. When my husband returned from work, Tom rushed to him in tears, telling him I had been swearing at him all day long. He said I forced him to put away toys and didn't let him watch cartoons. But I haven't said a word to him all day. Robert was angry at me, and he didn't believe me. It was very insulting. He took the side of someone else's kid instead of supporting his wife. If I was distracted a little while cooking, this little pest would pour a whole pack of salt or pepper into the pan. As a result, we got left without lunch or dinner, and we had to eat ready-to-cook products. Tom purposely scattered small Lego parts around the house. Every time I stepped on a part and screamed loudly, he laughed and smiled. He was a real little devil. He refused to eat what I cooked. He refused to go shopping with me. He would go mad when he saw Robert hugging me. He wanted my husband to be with him 24/7, and he didn't even think of me. It got to the point I didn't want to go home in the evening. I knew the only things waiting for me there were tantrums and fights. Tom would cry again. Robert would be angry at me for not being able to find a common language with a kid, and I would be on a hell circle again. I got tired. I hated that my home no longer belonged to me. Meanwhile, I can't force Robert to choose, me or the kid. I understand that's too cruel. However, I don't know how to live in this hell. I have no idea. And one evening, things got even more complicated. Tom refused to eat my food at dinner. Then, he threw a tantrum when I sat down to make something out of Legos with him and Robert. Before, this boy used to cry in this situation. This time, he accused me with all his anger that his mom and dad can't live because of me. I didn't understand what he was talking about. I thought the kid just misunderstood something. But Robert sighed and said it was time for him to tell me the whole truth. It turned out Tom was not the kid of his dead friend. He was Robert's son. Before we started dating, he had a long-term relationship with another student. They'd been dating for 2 years. She got pregnant and gave birth to a kid. At that time, Robert had just started his teaching career. The kid was out of his plans, so he refused him and broke off his relationship with that girl, and he stopped any communication with his son. Recently, this girl found him and confronted him with the fact she was tired of being a single mom. She wanted to rebuild her own life, and she didn't need a kid. She gave him an ultimatum. The boy would either go to an orphanage or to his dad. Robert was nervous. He didn't know what to do. He didn't really want to tell me about his son, but he also didn't want to leave the boy in an orphanage, so he had to come up with a story for me. At first, Tom didn't see Robert as his dad. Then he got used to him and decided his mom had left because Dad had found a new wife. Me! That's why I became his #1 enemy. I was listening to Robert's story, and I couldn't believe this was all true. All this time my husband had been deceiving me, and I tried to get into his position. I endured Tom's tantrums and his disgusting attitude towards me. Anyway, now we continue to live as we lived. I still haven't forgiven Robert. But I don't know what to do in this situation. I love my husband, and I don't want to divorce him. But I can't stand a kid from another woman in my house any longer. What would you recommend? What is the best way to act in this situation? Should I try to accept everything as it is and do my best to make friends with Tom? Write your tips in the comments section. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to click thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel to never miss new stories and click the bell button to stay tuned. See you. Have a great day.